Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. Ash fell in drifts from a shattered sky, like fragments of forgotten worlds. It clung to broken stone pillars, cloaked the rusted husks of spacecraft in a deathly gray, and turned the cracked pathways of Lyrian 9's space station into a tapestry of despair. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of scorched metal and faded memories, even filtered through the worn mask Ryan wore. Each breath was a battle, a defiance against the slow death lurking in this toxic void. Ryan, a wandering mercenary, trudged through the ruins, his armored boots crunching strange crystalline shards, remnants of the energy that once powered a civilization now reduced to dust. Every step was a negotiation with survival, as the oxygen gauge on his wrist flickered red, warning of only hours left. The darkness of the cosmos, cold and infinite, loomed behind him, waiting for a single misstep to swallow him whole. Lyrian 9 had once been a beacon of the Arvox, a people who defied the stars with galaxy-spanning ships and cities suspended in the void. Now it was a graveyard, where time and hope lay crushed beneath the weight of collapse. Faintly glowing symbols on the walls, like whispers of a dead language, told of a people who flew too high and fell too far. Ryan gripped his plasma rifle tighter, his armored fingers brushing the trigger, his eyes scanning the narrow corridors. Flickering light from broken control panels cast warped shadows on the walls, like ghosts dancing in the gloom. The cosmic wind howled through cracks in the station's hull, a chilling sound, like the wails of abandoned souls. He moved slowly, cautiously, every muscle taut as a wire. This wasn't his first time in places like this, tombs of fallen civilizations, but Lyrian 9 was different. It wasn't just dead. It carried a profound sorrow, as if the very space itself was mourning. A faint crack echoed from the distance, halting Ryan in his tracks. He crouched low, slipping into the shadow of a shattered machine, his heart pounding in his chest. The wind? Or debris falling? He held his breath, ears straining for any sound. This station wasn't safe. Arvox hunter drones, relics of an ancient security system, still prowled somewhere, their red eyes blazing, their metal claws sharp as blades. Ryan had seen them tear a group of treasure hunters to shreds in seconds. But this sound wasn't the clash of metal, nor the mechanical hiss of a drone. It was soft, fragile, almost like a stifled sob. The blood in Ryan's veins turned to ice. He slid into a darkened corner, back pressed against the freezing wall, hands tightening on his rifle. Something had survived in these ruins, and he wasn't sure he wanted to face it. He took a deep breath, the air rasping through his mask's filter, and crept toward the sound. The corridor narrowed, sharp debris crunching under his boots, as if warning of the danger ahead. A flickering control panel cast light on a pile of wreckage, twisted metal beams, cables spilling out like the veins of a dead beast. And there, amid the chaos, he saw a small figure, curled up like a dry leaf caught in the wind. An alien child, no older than 10, its silver skin glimmering faintly in the stuttering light. Its crimson eyes, glowing like embers, stared into the void, not with fear, but with a painful resignation, as if it was accustomed to being left behind. One of its legs was trapped under a heavy metal beam, dark purple blood pooling on the floor, shimmering strangely in the darkness. Ryan froze, his rifle still aimed downward, but his hands trembled. His breath grew heavy, not from lack of oxygen, but from a familiar pang rising in his chest, the helplessness of failing to save others. Memories of Arian flooded back, where his squad, his family, was slaughtered in an ambush. He had fled, survived, but at the cost of blood-soaked nightmares and screams that never faded. This child, with its crimson eyes and fragile frame, was a mirror to his failures. Logic screamed in his mind. Walk away. It's not human. It's a burden. You can't save everyone. But those eyes, though resigned, flickered with a tiny spark, a faint ember defying the dark. Ryan cursed under his breath, his voice hoarse through the mask. Damn it! He muttered, lowering his rifle. He knelt beside the child, his wrist-mounted bioscanner beeping, displaying a weak pulse, fractured bones, and severe blood loss. A delicate necklace of woven metal gleamed on its neck, etched with strange symbols, as if counting down its time. Ryan carefully touched the beam pinning the child's leg, testing its weight. It was too heavy to lift by hand, but he had no choice. He shrugged off his pack, pulling out a crude pry bar fashioned from ship wreckage, and began to lever. Each movement was a trial, sweat streaming beneath his mask, his breaths growing ragged as oxygen dwindled. The child whimpered, a small sound that cut into his heart like a blade. "Hang on, kid," he whispered, unsure if it understood. The beam groaned, then gave way with a crack, leaving a gushing wound on the child's leg. Ryan wrapped a thermal blanket around its frail body, then lifted it gently, as if cradling a fragile gem. The child trembled, its head resting on his shoulder, so weak it seemed almost weightless. But its faint warmth, piercing through his cold armor, ignited a small flame in his chest. A metallic screech echoed from afar, a hunter drone, stalking. Ryan clutched the child tighter, his heart racing. The nearest shelter was a ruined warehouse, 2 miles through trap-laden corridors. He didn't know if he could reach it before his oxygen ran out, or before the drones found them. But he walked, each step heavy, carrying not just the child, but a silent vow that this time, he would not fail. Ryan knelt beside the child, the faint glow of a broken control panel casting light on its silver skin, creating patches of light and shadow like a shattered painting. His wrist bioscanner beeped relentlessly, each sound a harsh prod. Weak pulse, fractured leg, severe blood loss, chronic malnutrition. The cold numbers on the screen seemed to pronounce a death sentence on the tiny creature. A delicate necklace of woven metal gleamed on its neck, etched with strange, twisting symbols, like the veins of an ancient machine, as if counting down its survival. Ryan cursed under his breath, his hoarse voice muffled by the gas mask. A familiar beast stirred in his chest, helplessness, dragging with it memories he tried to bury. Arian, its icy skies stained red with blood, his squad, their familiar faces, their laughter in the dark, torn apart by the plasma blades of space raiders. He had fled, survived, but at the cost of endless nightmares where their voices called his name, accusing, pleading. Logic howled in his mind, sharp as the cosmic wind whistling through Lyrian Nine's cracks. "Leave it! This child is a burden. Not human, not your responsibility. Your oxygen will last only hours." But as he met the child's crimson eyes, no pleading, no begging, just a quiet acceptance of death, an old fire flared in his chest. It was the fire he thought had died on Arian, the fire of compassion, of defying fate. Those eyes, though resigned, held a faint spark, like a lone star in an endless void. Ryan clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms through his armored gloves. "Not again," he muttered, a vow to himself. He couldn't turn away, couldn't let another life fade into the dark. He holstered his plasma rifle, the motion slow but resolute, and slung off his pack, rummaging for tools. The metal beam pinning the child's leg was heavier than he thought, its sharp edge sunk deep into the floor, like a blade of cruelty. He pulled a crude pry bar from his pack, a piece of ship wreckage he'd sharpened during his wandering days, and began to lever. Each motion was a struggle, sweat streaming beneath his mask, his breaths growing labored as the oxygen gauge blinked warnings. The child whimpered, a faint sound that sliced into his heart like a knife. "Hang on, kid," he whispered, his voice rough, unsure if it understood. The beam creaked, resisting, then finally gave way with a crack, leaving a wound oozing purple blood. The blood shimmered in the flickering light, like a small river flowing through a dead desert. Ryan opened his pack, pulling out a thin, silver-gray thermal blanket, and wrapped it around the child's gaunt frame. It was terrifyingly light, as if a cosmic gust could blow it away. He lifted it gently, like holding a fragile gem, feeling its faint warmth pierce through his cold armor. The child trembled, its head resting on his shoulder, so weak it seemed almost invisible, yet its presence weighed heavily on his heart. "Hang on," he repeated, his voice firmer, as if convincing them both. He clutched it tightly, checking his oxygen gauge, less than 3 hours left. The nearest shelter was a ruined warehouse, 2 miles through Lyrian Nine's trap-filled corridors. He didn't know if he could reach it before his oxygen ran out, or before the Arvox hunter drones, ruthless machines, found them. But he had no time for doubt. He walked, each step heavy, his armored boots crunching on debris-strewn floors. The corridor narrowed, its warped metal walls closing in like a vice. Flickering light from broken panels cast distorted shadows, like monsters lurking in the dark. The cosmic wind howled through cracks, mingling with a distant metallic screech, drones, or something worse. Ryan crouched low, trying to make himself smaller, the child in his arms his entire world now. Each step was a gamble, the floor threatening to collapse, or a hidden laser ready to slice him in half. He recalled tales of Lyrian 9, of treasure hunters who never returned, of traps designed to guard Arvox secrets. But he wasn't after treasure. He just wanted to keep this tiny flame burning. Suddenly, a sharp screech rang out, closer than he thought. Ryan froze, heart pounding, eyes scanning the darkness. A hunter drone, smaller than those he'd seen, emerged from a corner, its crimson eyes sweeping the space like death's searchlights. It moved slowly, but each step shook the floor, its metal claws glinting in the flickering light. Ryan slipped into a shadowed nook, back pressed against the icy wall, his breath ragged in his mask. The child trembled in his arms but made no sound, as if it knew their lives hung by a thread. He clutched it tighter, his other hand gripping the pry bar, ready to fight despite the odds. The drone paused, its head swiveling slowly, its red eyes passing just meters from their hiding spot. Ryan held his breath, sweat valued the child's survival. Sweat dripped down his spine, his heart threatening to burst. Then, like a miracle, the drone turned away, its screech fading into the dark. Ryan exhaled, his body shaking with adrenaline. He looked down at the child, its crimson eyes wide, not with fear, but with a strange curiosity, as if trying to understand the human before it. "You're tougher than I thought," he muttered, a faint smile flickering beneath his mask. He walked on, faster, more determined, carrying not just the child, but a silent vow that this time, he would not fail. The warehouse lay ahead, but the journey had only begun, and Lyrian Nine's darkness still waited. The warehouse loomed in the faint glow of an emergency light, a crumbling fortress teetering amid a cosmic dust storm. Its warped metal walls, scarred with rust and punctured holes, seemed to bear witness to centuries of oblivion. Ryan kicked hard at the jammed door, his shoulder jolting with the impact, the metal groaning in protest. He carried the child across the threshold, each step cautious, as if the floor might give way. Inside, wreckage piled high, shattered metal crates, cables spilling like dried veins, and crystal fragments glimmering faintly under the light. Ryan found a tattered, dust-covered mat and set the child down, gentle as if placing a fragile treasure. Its silver skin shimmered in the dim light, but its crimson eyes, bright as embers, locked onto him, unblinking, carrying a mix of curiosity and doubt. Ryan worked with the precision of someone used to patching both machines and souls. He dragged metal scraps from the debris, using them to seal gaps in the walls where cosmic winds sliced through like icy blades. Each hammer strike against metal was a challenge to the darkness outside. He rummaged through his pack, finding a solar-powered heater, old and rattling, but it hummed to life when he connected it to a nearly drained battery. The heater's faint orange glow spread, pushing back Lyrian Nine's deadly cold, but it couldn't dispel the unease strangling his heart. He knew this warehouse wasn't a true refuge, just a fleeting respite before the universe bared its claws again. The dust storm howled outside, laced with the moan of metal torn by the wind, a song of destruction. He sat beside the child, opening his pack to retrieve a dry ration packet, saved from his days wandering dead planets. He squeezed the nutrient paste through a straw, a gray, unappealing liquid, but the only lifeline he had. He offered it to the child's lips, moving slowly, wary of startling it. It stared at him, its crimson eyes narrowing, as if weighing whether to trust this stranger. After a moment's hesitation, it sipped, its thin lips trembling, each swallow a question. "Am I still worth saving?" Ryan watched, his heart heavy. He'd seen eyes like those before, in mirrors, during long nights on lonely ships, when he wondered what value he held after all he'd lost. Why? Its voice broke the silence, faint and halting, struggling with the galaxy's common tongue, as if words were a luxury it had never been allowed. The sound, small but sharp, cut through the wind's howl and the heater's clatter. Ryan paused, his hand frozen midair. He removed his gas mask, revealing a scarred face, cuts from Arian, burns from battles he wished to forget. His eyes, weary and deep, met the child's. "Because you're alive," he said, his voice steady despite the storm in his heart, like a ship lost in a tempest. "That's reason enough." The child blinked, its crimson eyes flickering with a strange light. Not hope, not yet, but a profound curiosity, as if trying to decipher this odd human who refused to abandon it. Ryan leaned against the wall, his hand resting on his plasma rifle, fingers brushing the trigger out of habit. His eyes stayed on the child, but his mind drifted to memories he tried to bury. Arian wasn't just a failure, it was a scar etched into his soul. He remembered Lila's face, his commander, who shoved him into an escape pod before their ship exploded. "Keep living, Ryan," she'd said, but he wasn't sure he'd lived, only existed. This child, with its fragile body and resigned gaze, was a chance to fix that, or a reminder he might fail again. He shook his head, banishing the darkness in his mind, and focused on the child's breathing, now steadier, though still faint as a candle in the wind. A metallic screech echoed from afar, sharp and ominous, snapping Ryan to attention. He sprang up, rifle aimed at the door, heart pounding. A hunter drone, or just debris caught in the wind? He couldn't risk it. He checked the door, reinforcing it with another metal bar, but he knew it wouldn't hold against a true drone. This warehouse, though a temporary haven, was a trap if they lingered too long. He glanced back at the child, now curled on the mat, its crimson eyes still tracking him, silent. The curiosity in its gaze, though fragile, sparked a small, defiant flame in his chest. He didn't know who it was, or why it was abandoned, but he knew one thing: the universe could be cruel, could try to snuff out every light, but he wouldn't let it take this life. Not today. He sat closer, checking the wound on its leg. The purple blood had stopped, but the leg was swollen, needing better support. He took a thin metal strip, bending it into a crude splint, and secured it with cable. The child whimpered but didn't resist, as if pain was an old friend. "You're stronger than I thought," Ryan said, a faint smile crossing his scarred face. He didn't expect a reply, but the child's eyes, for the first time, seemed to soften, as if it was starting to believe it might survive. The dust storm raged outside, the metal groaning like a warning. Ryan gripped his rifle, eyes scanning the dark. The warehouse might be a shelter, but Lyrian 9 spared no weakness. And deep down, he knew their journey had only just begun. The night passed in a heavy silence, as if the universe itself held its breath, waiting for an eruption. The heater's faint, rhythmic clatter was the only sound piercing the stillness of the ruined warehouse. Its dim, orange glow cast shadows on the warped metal walls, trembling shapes like silent ghosts watching from the dark. Ryan leaned against the wall, his plasma rifle resting across his thighs, fingers ever ready on the trigger. He didn't sleep, didn't dare. His eyes scanned the darkness, lingering on the gaps in the walls where cosmic wind whistled through, carrying the groans of torn metal. Every sound, no matter how faint, set him on edge, like a string stretched to its breaking point. Lyrian 9 was a tomb, and survivors here were never allowed to let their guard down. He glanced at the child, curled on the tattered mat, its breaths faint as a candle flickering before a storm. Its silver skin glimmered under the heater's light, but its crimson eyes were closed, lost in a fragile sleep. Dawn arrived, not radiant, but a gray haze from distant stars seeping through cracks in the warehouse ceiling. The light was cold, offering no hope, only a reminder that time was running out. Ryan checked the oxygen gauge on his wrist. 2 days' worth if he rationed, but with the child, that dwindled fast. He cursed under his breath, not at the situation, but at the helplessness gnawing at him, the same feeling that had haunted him since the massacre on Arian. He remembered his squad's faces, the family he'd lost, torn apart in the cold glow of plasma. He'd fled, survived, but at the cost of scars that never healed, on his skin and in his soul. This child, with its small frame and resigned gaze, was a chance to atone, or a warning that he'd fail again. The child stirred, its crimson eyes opening, glowing like embers in the gloom. It looked at him, silent, but its gaze carried a strange weight, as if it could see the invisible scars on his soul. Then, its voice broke through, faint and trembling, like a breeze stirring ash. "I am Kael," it whispered, stumbling over the galaxy's common tongue, each word a heavy stone. Ryan tilted his head, saying nothing, only listening. He knew how to wait, how to let painful stories surface, like debris from a shattered ship. Kael spoke, its voice halting, as if each word was a blade turned inward. It told of the Arvox, a people who worshipped strength and perfection, forging bodies and machines to conquer the stars. When Kael was born, frail and vulnerable, they saw it as a stain, a mistake unworthy of their blood. They brought it to Lyrian 9, claiming it was a place for eternal rest among fallen heroes. But Kael, though too young to articulate, knew the truth. They discarded it, like a broken tool, without hesitation. Ryan clenched his fists, nails digging into his palms through his armored gloves. Anger surged, not just for Kael, but for himself. He saw his own reflection in its story, a survivor, abandoned by fate, carrying the scars of cowardice for failing to save his squad on Arian. He remembered Lila, his commander, who died so he could live, and the pain twisted like a blade in his heart. "They were wrong," he said, his voice low but sharp, like a honed sword. "Strength isn't in the body. It's here." He touched his chest, where his weary heart still beat. Kael stared, its crimson eyes flickering with a spark of defiance, a tiny flame kindled by his words. It didn't respond immediately, only watched, as if weighing whether his words were truth or empty promises. "You were left behind too?" Kael asked, its voice small but piercing, like a needle through Ryan's armor. The question hit harder than any plasma blast. He gave a bitter laugh, his voice tinged with regret, as if spitting out a buried memory. "You could say that," he replied, his eyes drifting to the darkness where Arian's ghosts waited. "But I'm still here. And so are you." The words weren't just for Kael, but for himself, a reminder that survival wasn't cowardice, it was a fight. Kael fell silent, but its small, cold, trembling hand brushed his. The gesture was fragile, like a thread linking two lost souls, but it carried profound meaning, as if they'd found each other in the ashes of a dead world. Ryan looked at that small hand, feeling its faint warmth through his gloves. He thought of Lila, of what she taught him. True strength wasn't victory, but rising after every fall. Kael, with its frail body and defiant gaze, embodied that. He checked its wound, the crude splint held, but purple blood had seeped through the bandage. He needed more medical supplies, but leaving the warehouse was a deadly gamble. A distant metallic screech, unclear if wind or drone, made him grip his rifle, heart pounding. He looked at Kael, its crimson eyes now glinting with a new light, not hope, but a challenge to fate. In the ruined warehouse, amid Lyrian 9's moans, two outcasts found a faint spark, and Ryan knew, no matter how cruel the universe, he'd fight to keep this flame alive. The second day in the warehouse dawned with gray starlight filtering through ceiling cracks, a reminder that time was slipping away. Ryan sat by the heater, its rattling hum a harsh countdown. He checked their supplies, hands moving swiftly but carefully, like a soldier on a battlefield. Oxygen for 3 days, but split between 2, it shrank like a tightening noose. Dry rations would last 2 days if shared, and the heater, their only shield against Lyrian 9's lethal cold, groaned, its battery nearly drained. Ryan glanced at Kael, propped against the wall, its crimson eyes glowing in the dark. The wound on its leg, though splinted, kept it immobile. The child was more alert, but its silver body still trembled, like a dry leaf before a storm. He needed more resources, oxygen, food, and if lucky, a medkit. But leaving Kael was a gamble, a double-edged blade between life and death. Ryan knelt beside Kael, shaping a thin metal scrap from the debris into a sturdier splint, securing it with cable. Each motion was precise, like a mechanic tending a priceless machine. Kael whimpered but didn't resist, its crimson eyes tracking him with youthful resolve. He drew a small dagger from his belt, its steel blade glinting in the heater's light, and placed it in Kael's hand. "If anything happens, fight," he said, his voice stern, but his eyes softened, as if handing over not just a weapon, but trust. Kael gripped the dagger, its small hand trembling but firm, nodding with crimson eyes blazing a tiny flame, as if Ryan's words had sparked something within. "I'll try," it whispered, weak but resolute. Ryan nodded, a faint smile flickering beneath his mask. "Good kid." He stood, checking his plasma rifle, full charge, but no match for a drone swarm. He slung on his pack, glancing at his oxygen gauge. 2 hours, enough for a quick trip if he avoided trouble. He met Kael's gaze one last time, its eyes locked on him, not with fear, but with fragile trust, a thread binding two lost souls. Ryan stepped out, the warehouse door creaking as he closed it, the metal's echo ringing in the frigid corridor. The passage outside was a deadly maze, laced with ancient Arvox traps. Hidden lasers in the dark, pressure-triggered floors, and invisible radiation awaited the careless. Ryan crouched low, rifle ready, eyes scanning every shadow. Sweat streamed beneath his mask, his breath ragged as he dodged a laser beam, its red glow slicing the air inches from him. He muttered a curse, heart pounding, but kept moving. The nearest storage cache, per his rough mental map, was half a mile through crumbling corridors. Reaching the cache, he found the door jammed, but pried it open with his bar, muscles straining. Inside, he found what he needed: 2 oxygen canisters, canned rations, and an old but usable medkit. He stuffed them into his pack, moving quickly but cautiously, like a thief in a cursed temple. Then, a sharp metallic screech froze him, blood turning to ice. A hunter drone, the size of a vehicle, emerged from the dark, its crimson eyes sweeping like death's searchlights. Each step shook the floor, its metal claws glinting in the flickering light. Ryan ducked behind a pillar, heart racing, breath shallow in his mask. He gripped his rifle, but firing would be suicide, the drone would summon others. He tossed the metal scrap far off, its clatter echoing like bait. The drone's head swiveled, eyes locking on the sound, and Ryan bolted, sprinting back to the warehouse, his pack heavy on his shoulders. But as he neared the warehouse, a small, desperate scream tore through the air. "Kael!" Ryan roared, crashing through the shattered door, heart ready to burst. Inside, Kael stabbed wildly at a smaller drone that had ripped through the entrance, its red eyes glinting, claws swiping inches from the child. Ryan raised his rifle, firing a plasma bolt, the blue flash shredding the drone into smoldering scrap. Kael collapsed onto the mat, trembling, purple blood seeping from its leg wound, staining the bandage. I tried," it whispered, weak but proud, like a tiny warrior. Ryan knelt, checking the wound, hands shaking with anger and fear. The blood flowed, but it wasn't critical, it had held its own. "You did great," he said, voice choking, not for the wound, but for Kael's courage, a discarded child who still fought. He rebandaged the wound with the new medkit, but his heart was heavy. Distant metallic screeches echoed, more drones were coming. He looked at Kael, its crimson eyes now burning with new resolve, as if that small battle had changed it. Ryan checked the oxygen canisters, enough to survive, but not for long. The warehouse was no longer safe. They had to leave Lyrian 9, find an escape ship or a way out, or die in this ash heap. He met Kael's gaze, seeing a small, defiant flame burning within. "We're getting out of here," he said, his voice firm, a vow. Kael nodded, its small hand gripping the dagger, ready for what lay ahead. In the heater's faint orange glow, Ryan knelt beside Kael, carefully rebandaging its leg wound. The purple blood had stopped, but the crude bandage was soaked, a reminder that their time was running out. He checked the metal splint, tightening the cables to ensure it held, each motion precise, like a soldier preparing for a final stand. Kael's crimson eyes followed him, no longer just curious, but carrying a fragile trust, a thread binding two outcasts in Lyrian Nine's darkness. As he tied the last bandage, a rhythmic glow from Kael's necklace caught his eye. Thin metal strands, etched with strange symbols, pulsed with faint blue light, like the heartbeat of an ancient machine. Ryan frowned, touching it, feeling a strange warmth pulse through his gloves. Suddenly, a holographic image flickered in the air, a detailed map of Lyrian 9, its winding corridors leading to a red-marked point. The Heart of Arvox. Kael flinched, its small body trembling, crimson eyes wide. My clan, it whispered, voice halting, as if pulling a painful memory from the depths. They said it holds the secret of strength. Ryan studied the map, its sharp lines tracing a deadly maze. The Heart of Arvox could be a cache of advanced tech, an escaped ship, or even a power source to restart the station. But it could also be a trap, a false promise from a civilization that abandoned its own. He didn't trust Arvox's legacy, not after what they'd done to Kael. But when he met its eyes, a flicker of young hope shone, a tiny flame fighting the dark. Ryan clenched his fists, anger and doubt warring in his chest, but that gaze left him no choice. All right, kid, he said, voice low but firm. We'll find out what it is. They prepared for the journey, a gamble greater than any battle Ryan had faced. He scavenged the warehouse debris, finding metal scraps and broken wheels to craft a crude wheelchair. He welded them with a small plasma torch, sparks flaring like tiny stars in the dark. The chair creaked, far from elegant, but sturdy enough to hold Kael, its injured leg propped up. He strapped Kael in, ensuring it was secure, then checked his pack, 2 oxygen canisters, some rations, and the medkit. His plasma rifle was fully charged, but no match for a drone swarm. Kael gripped the dagger Ryan had given, its small hand trembling but steady, crimson eyes blazing with resolve. I won't slow you down, it said, voice small but sharp, like a vow. Ryan gave a faint smile beneath his mask. You never have, kid. The path to the Heart of Arvox was a gauntlet of death. The corridor outside the warehouse was a ruin, jagged metal shards hanging like blades, invisible radiation lurking in the shadows. Ryan pushed the wheelchair, each step a trial, the floor trembling under his weight. Flickering light from broken panels cast warped shadows, like ghosts stalking them. The cosmic wind howled through cracks, mingling with distant metallic screeches, patrolling drones, or worse. Ryan crouched low, eyes scanning every shadow, heart pounding. He dodged a hidden laser in the wall, its red beams slicing the air inches from the chair. Kael gripped the chair's edges, silent, as if it had learned to stay quiet to survive. Suddenly, a sharp screech rang out, closer than he thought. Ryan halted, pulling the chair into a shadowed nook, back pressed against the icy wall. A hunter drone, smaller than the last, emerged from the dark, its red eyes sweeping the corridor like death's searchlights. Its metal claws scraped the floor, leaving deep gouges. Ryan held his breath, hand tightening on his rifle, but firing would be suicide. Kael, trembling but calm, touched its necklace. A faint blue pulse flashed, and an invisible signal rippled out, freezing the drone. Its red eyes flickered, as if disrupted, then it stood still for seconds before turning away, its screech fading into the dark. Ryan stared at Kael, stunned. I didn't know it could do that, it whispered, voice awed, crimson eyes wide as if discovering itself. Ryan squeezed its shoulder, a gesture both comforting and cautionary. You just saved us, he said, but a new fear stirred within. The necklace wasn't just a map. It was a key, a power Kael didn't understand, and that made them a target. He pushed the chair onward, faster but more cautious. The necklace's holographic map lingered in his mind, guiding them through collapsing corridors and radiation zones. But each step was a warning. If the necklace held such power, Kael wasn't just abandoned. It was hunted. Not just by drones, but by those who knew its value, perhaps the Arvox clan, or other treasure hunters in the galaxy. Ryan looked at Kael, the small child with defiant eyes, and felt a fire blaze in his chest. He didn't care what the Heart of Arvox was, treasure, ship, or deadly trap. He only knew Kael deserved to live, and he'd fight to his last breath to ensure it. The corridor ahead was pitch black, but Kael's necklace, though faint, was a torch lighting the way. And in Lyrian Nine's darkness, 2 survivors pressed toward their fate. The dark corridors of Lyrian 9 trembled under Ryan's boots, each step pushing Kael's crude wheelchair through jagged debris and cracked floors. The faint flicker of Kael's necklace projected a holographic map, guiding them deeper into the deadly maze toward the Heart of Arvox. Cosmic wind howled through wall cracks, mingling with the thud of Ryan's heart in his chest. His eyes scanned the shadows, plasma rifle ready, every corner hiding a potential threat. Kael sat silent, crimson eyes blazing with youthful resolve, her small hand gripping the dagger, ready for anything. Ryan said nothing, but their eyes met briefly, a silent vow to face this together. Then, a deafening explosion shook the station like it was being torn apart. Debris rained from the ceiling, and Ryan yanked the wheelchair into a nook, his heart ready to burst. A ship had landed somewhere deep within Lyrian 9. Green engine glow pierced through wall gaps, illuminating Kael's silver face. Ryan pressed against the icy wall, breath ragged in his gas mask. Heavy footsteps, clanging metal, and low, harsh voices echoed from afar, speaking the cold Arvox tongue. He peered through a crack, and his blood froze. A squad of Arvox mercenaries, towering in high-tech armor, emerged from a wrecked ship. Their plasma weapons gleamed, and on their shoulder plates, Ryan saw Kael's clan symbol, a swirling circle, identical to the marks on her necklace. They weren't here to save her. They were here to erase the last stain on their bloodline. Rage flared in Ryan like wildfire, but he knew a direct fight was suicide. He pulled Kael's wheelchair into a narrow side tunnel, cluttered with debris, his heart pounding like war drums. "Why won't they leave you alone?" he growled, voice hoarse, not angry at Kael but at her clan's cruelty. Kael bowed her head, small hand touching her necklace, as if it were the root of all her pain. "The necklace," she whispered, voice trembling but clear. "It's a key. The Heart of Arvox isn't just technology. It's something alive." Ryan froze, breath caught in his throat. He stared at the necklace, its faint blue pulse like a heartbeat. It wasn't just a map or a drone disabler. It was the key to an ancient entity, perhaps an AI beyond human intellect, or an alien life form sealed by the Arvox centuries ago. Kael's clan feared that power, feared a flaw like her could awaken it. They wanted her dead to bury that secret forever. Fury surged in Ryan, not for the secret or its power, but for Kael, a child discarded and hunted for existing. He didn't care what the Heart of Arvox was. He wanted Kael to live, to see a sky not choked with ash. "They won't touch you," he said, voice low and sharp, a sworn oath. Kael met his gaze, her crimson eyes sparking with something new, not hope, but trust. But the mercenaries' footsteps grew closer, their armor clanging in the tunnel. Ryan pushed the wheelchair faster through collapsing passages, dodging jagged metal shards hanging like blades. Each step was a gamble, the floor threatening to give way, or a hidden laser ready to end them. Suddenly, a plasma blast flared behind, shredding a wall meters away. Ryan fell, pulling the wheelchair into a shadowed corner, back pressed against debris. A towering Arvox mercenary advanced, plasma rifle glowing. Ryan raised his weapon, but before he could fire, a second mercenary's shot hit his shoulder. Pain exploded, hot blood soaking his armor, but he gritted his teeth, scooping Kael from the wheelchair and diving through a collapsing corridor. The mercenaries roared, their pursuit like death's drumbeat. Ryan, despite the agony, clutched Kael, her small body trembling in his arms. "Don't be scared, kid," he whispered, voice choked with pain and rage. He knew they couldn't run forever. The tunnel led to an old storage bay, packed with volatile fuel canisters. Ryan set Kael behind a pillar, checking his rifle. Only a few shots left. He pulled a plasma grenade from his pack, rigging it to a canister, and waited. When the mercenaries appeared, he triggered the grenade. A cataclysmic explosion rocked the tunnel, blue flames engulfing the enemy, debris sealing their path. Ryan collapsed, blood pooling from his shoulder, but he lifted Kael, dragging her through the wreckage, breath ragged in his mask. "We're still alive," he said, voice weak but resolute. Kael gripped his hand, her small, cold fingers unyielding, crimson eyes burning with determination. But Ryan knew the explosion only bought time, not safety. The Arvox mercenaries would return, and the Heart of Arvox, whatever it was, lay ahead. He looked at Kael, hunted for a secret she didn't choose. In Lyrian Nine's darkness, amid the wind's howl and blood stench, Ryan felt an unyielding fire ignite. He'd take Kael to the Heart of Arvox, not for power, but because she deserved to know who she was. And no matter how cruel the universe, he wouldn't let it snuff out this flame. 2 days of evasion through Lyrian Nine's suffocating tunnels had been a relentless nightmare, each moment a blade testing Ryan's will. He guided Kael through cramped passages, dodging the heavy steps of Arvox mercenaries, their pursuit relentless as specters. The wound in his shoulder burned, blood crusting his armor, but he gritted his teeth, pushing the crude wheelchair through collapsing corridors where jagged debris hung like guillotines. Kael's necklace, its faint blue glow pulsing like a heartbeat, was their only beacon, its holographic map leading through secret paths, bypassing laser traps and invisible radiation. Kael, trembling from pain and exhaustion, clutched her dagger, crimson eyes blazing with defiance, as if fighting alongside him. The cosmic wind shrieked through cracks, blending with Ryan's pounding heart, but each step forward was a vow, they would not give up. When the massive door to the Heart of Arvox loomed, etched with faintly glowing Arvox runes, Ryan felt a strange energy, not hope, but a challenge to fate. The door, carved with whispering runes, shuddered as Ryan forced it open with his shoulder. Inside, a vast chamber unfolded, like the core of a dead star. A colossal energy core hovered midair, radiating blinding blue light, encircled by spinning metal rings, a miniature galaxy breathing. Its low hum vibrated in Ryan's chest, an ancient hymn both majestic and terrifying. Kael, in her crude wheelchair, trembled, her necklace resonating with the core, its faint blue pulses blending with the chamber's glow. Ryan helped her stand, his hands shaking from the pain in his shoulder, blood staining his torn armor, dripping onto the cold metal floor. "If you want to stop, we stop," he said, voice hoarse, eyes locked on Kael, as if shielding her from fate itself. Kael shook her head, crimson eyes ablaze, no longer the faint glow of an abandoned child, but the fire of one seeking truth. "I want to know who I am," she whispered, voice small but sharp, cutting through the dark. Ryan clenched his fists, pain radiating from his shoulder, but the ache in his heart was greater. He thought of their journey, trap-laden corridors, near deaths by drones and mercenaries, and Kael's trusting gaze, pulling him from his own darkness. He wanted to scream, to drag her away, but her proud, hopeful eyes left him powerless. He supported Kael toward the core, each step heavy, like walking into an inescapable storm. Kael raised her necklace, its thin metal strands vibrating like strings, and as it touched the core, a deep boom echoed, like a god's heartbeat awakening. Blue light erupted, swallowing the chamber, and a disembodied voice, ancient yet powerful, resounded, like an echo from millennia past. "I am the Warden," it said, each word a hammer striking space. "Created by the Arvox to preserve their knowledge, to guide their conquest of the stars. But they feared me, feared the power of knowledge, and sealed me in darkness." Ryan stood rigid, gripping his rifle, ready to fire at the voice if it threatened Kael. The Warden continued, the core's light pulsing as if watching them. "You, Kael, are not weak. Your body is the result of a failed experiment to link with me. You are a living key, carrying a fragment of my consciousness. Your clan abandoned you, fearing the power within." Kael trembled, crimson eyes wide, confronting her identity for the first time. Rage surged in Ryan, blood pounding in his temples. "They were wrong!" he roared, voice echoing in the chamber. "You're not a tool, not a key. You're Kael." But the Warden ignored him, its light focusing on Kael like an invisible gaze. "You can awaken me," it said, voice cold but resonant. "I will restore Arvox's knowledge, lead survivors to a new era. But the cost is your life. Your consciousness will merge with me, and your body will dissolve," Ryan shouted, lunging to pull Kael back, hands shaking with fury and fear. "No! You don't need to prove anything. We'll find another way." But Kael turned, and for the first time, she smiled, a pure, radiant smile, like a star in the dark. "You gave me a reason to live, Ryan," she said, voice small but firm, a declaration. "You showed me I'm not a flaw. Now I want to give you a future." Ryan shook his head, hot tears streaming down his scarred face, the first in years. "Kael, don't," he whispered, voice breaking, a plea. But Kael, with strength she didn't know she had, raised her necklace and pressed it into the core. A cataclysmic roar erupted, like a star shattering. Blinding light engulfed the chamber, a blue energy vortex lifting Kael's small body into the air. Ryan screamed her name, lunging forward, but the light was a wall, forcing him back. Pain from his shoulder flared, blood pooling, and darkness dragged him into unconsciousness, Kael's voice echoing in his mind. "Ryan, thank you." In the moment before he faded, Ryan saw Kael, her silver body suspended in light, crimson eyes meeting his one last time, not with sorrow, but with pride. He remembered Arian, the squad he couldn't save, and that pain merged with losing Kael. But in that light, he sensed something, not an end, but a beginning. The Warden, or Kael herself, had done what the Arvox never dared, face true power, not of the body, but of the heart. Ryan collapsed, body heavy, but deep within, a small flame burned, carrying Kael's image, the child who changed him forever. Ryan awoke in dim light, body aching as if crushed under a star's weight. He lay on a cold metal floor, the stench of oil and scorched metal jolting him upright. His head spun, memories of the Heart of Arvox, blinding light, Kael's smile, his own screams, flooding back like a torrent. He scanned his surroundings, realizing he was in a cramped escape ship, its control panels flickering weakly. The engine's steady hum was like a living creature's pulse, and through the window, stars streaked past in endless dark. "Kael!" he shouted, voice hoarse, hands groping for the silver child. But only silence answered, cold and cruel, like the universe beyond. He staggered to his feet, dried blood caking his shoulder wound, staining his torn armor. In his hand, Kael's necklace, now a lifeless metal fragment, felt heavy, as if carrying her soul. He slammed his fist on the console, heart pounding, searching for a sign, a clue. A small screen flickered, and a disembodied voice, ancient yet powerful, echoed, like the Heart of Arvox's resonance. "I am the Warden," it said, each word carved into space. "Kael sacrificed herself to awaken me. Her consciousness merged with mine, becoming part of a greater intellect. She didn't die, Ryan, but her silver body dissolved. Kael wanted you to live. She said you taught her true strength is sacrificing for others." Ryan stood frozen, breath caught in his throat. He clutched the necklace, nails digging into his palm, hot tears streaming down his scarred face, the first since Arian, since he lost everything. "Kael," he whispered, voice shattered, a prayer no one heard. He saw her smile, pure and proud, and the pain twisted like a blade in his heart, piercing every armor he built. He looked out the window, where a blue-green planet emerged, gleaming like a jewel in the dark. A human colony, where survivors rebuilt from war's ashes. The Warden continued, voice calm but clear. "I'm taking you there, per Kael's wish. She wanted you to start anew, carrying her lesson, even in the deepest dark, a small spark can change everything." Ryan gripped the necklace, feeling as if it still held Kael's warmth, though only an illusion. He thought of their journey, trap-filled corridors, battles with drones and mercenaries, and Kael's crimson eyes, pulling him from his abyss. He'd saved her, but in the end, she saved him, not with her body, but with her unyielding heart. Then, the ship shuddered violently, as if seized by an invisible hand. Ryan fell against the wall, heart racing, gripping the console for balance. A metallic screech sounded from the system, followed by a faint but clear voice, achingly familiar. "Ryan! I'm still here." Ryan froze, breath stopping, as if the universe paused. It was Kael's voice, small but resolute, like a star's light piercing the dark. He lunged to the console, hands trembling, eyes scanning the screen for her silver face. "Kael?" he shouted, voice choked, daring not to believe. The warden responded, its tone now tinged with something new, as if Kael spoke through it. "Kael didn't just merge with me. Her consciousness became my core, a new form of life. She exists, not in body, but in my mind, guiding and protecting." Ryan sank to his knees, tears falling, not just from pain, but from fragile hope. He clutched the necklace, feeling as if he touched Kael herself. "You're still here, kid," he whispered, voice trembling but resolute. He recalled her words in the Heart of Arvox, wanting to give him a future. And now, she'd not only given him one but stayed, in a way no one could foresee. The ship stabilized, the blue-green planet growing clearer, its forests and oceans a promise of new life. Ryan stood, wiping tears, his scarred face now bearing new resolve. He thought of Arian, his lost squad, and Kael, the child who gave him a reason to live. "Thank you, kid," he whispered, voice steady. From the ship, Kael's voice replied, soft as a breeze. "We did it, Ryan." And in the new dawn's light, Ryan smiled, knowing that no matter how vast the universe, Kael was with him, guiding him, and guiding a new world. The escape ship landed on the colony in a crimson dawn, its engines giving a final screech before falling silent, like a sigh of release. Ryan stepped from the hatch, armored boots sinking into soft red soil, carrying the scent of dry grass and scorched metal. The raw land stretched before him, homes roofed with rusted metal, freshly tilled fields, and thin smoke rising from crude forges. The blue sky, flecked with white clouds, was alien after Lyrian 9's endless dark. Ryan clutched Kael's necklace, its cold metal warm with memory. He stood, scarred face bathed in the first sunlight, feeling a small spark, lit by Kael, spreading in his chest. The colony survivors, weary but resilient, gathered around the ship. They were the universe's outcasts, displaced by war, fleeing dead planets, refusing to yield to darkness. Ryan saw himself in their eyes, scars, losses, but unyielding will. He stepped forward, voice low but clear, and began Kael's story. He spoke of a silver child discarded by her clan for a frail body, hunted for bearing an ancient entity's secret. He told of their journey through Lyrian 9's deadly corridors, Kael's courage against drones, and her sacrifice to awaken the warden. "Kael saved me," he said, voice catching, hand tightening on the necklace. "And she can save us all, if we learn that true strength isn't in weapons or bodies, but in the heart." The survivors listened, some wiping tears, others nodding, as if Kael's story touched their hidden wounds. The warden, now bearing Kael's soul, appeared as a hologram from the ship, blue light shining on red soil. Its voice, blending age with Kael's innocence, shared ancient Arvox knowledge, how to build reactors, reclaim barren land, and craft purifiers from scrap. It became the colony's guardian, not through destruction, but through wisdom guiding them to a new future. Ryan worked alongside them, hands once wielding rifles now holding shovels and hammers, planting the first seeds in red fields, fixing old machines, and building homes from ruins. Each drop of sweat was a vow to Kael, proof her sacrifice wasn't in vain. Each night, as silver moonlight bathed the colony, Ryan sat by the escaped ship, now a central monument. He activated the comms, and Kael's voice, faint but clear, like a star through darkness, sounded through the speakers. "You're still here, kid," he whispered, touching the necklace, eyes on the starry sky. "Always," Kael replied, an invisible smile in her tone, as if sitting beside him, crimson eyes gleaming. They spoke of small things, sprouting seeds, children's laughter, dreams of a galaxy hearing their story. But Ryan knew, within the warden's mind, Kael was more than a voice. She was its core, a new life form, carrying the compassion and pride of a discarded child. The colony grew, from crude huts to a small city, with stone-paved roads and buildings aglow with light. Red fields turned green with crops, and warden-guided machines hummed, providing power and water. Ryan, once a wandering mercenary, became a reluctant leader. He didn't seek the role, but every decision, from resource allocation to defending against space raiders, bore Kael's mark. He taught the survivors her lesson: even in the deepest dark, a small spark can change everything. The colony's children, eyes bright with hope, called him the storyteller. And he retold Kael's tale, keeping her legacy alive in their hearts. The universe remained cruel, with cosmic storms and distant threats. But in the survivors' hearts, the fire of hope, compassion, and love burned. Ryan, now graying, stood on a hill overlooking the small city, Kael's necklace around his neck, glinting in moonlight. He remembered Arian, his lost squad, and Kael, the child who gave him purpose. "Thank you, kid," he whispered, voice steady. From the distant ship, Kael's voice answered, gentle as a breeze. "We did it, Ryan." And in the new dawn's light, Ryan smiled, knowing that no matter how vast the universe, Kael was with him, guiding him, and guiding a new world.